Welcome to Pro-Life Live, the program run by the students where we bring the experts and they bring the answers to discuss all things pro-life.
Hey everybody, this is Pro-Life Live, the program run by the students. We bring the experts and they bring the answers. I'm here joined tonight with Ryan Neuhaus. He is the state coordinator for Students for Life of America in Florida and the director of Invictus. Ryan, how's it going, man? How the Shrek you've been?
Oh, it's good. Just enjoying quarantine the best I can. Just staying healthy, staying safe, staying home. It's good.
Yeah. I see you're growing it out, man, huh?
Yeah, I figured it's a good time to try it out. I hadn't really done it before, hadn't grown out, so I'm going for it.
Let's get started, man. So, obviously, Ryan, you're pro-life. There's no doubt about that. Have you always been pro-life, man?
I have. Yeah, I grew up in a very conservative home. So funny enough, I'm the oldest of 11 kids. So if that doesn't scream pro-life, I don't know what else does, right?
Yeah.
I was taught from a very young age that human life is always valuable. Whether it has, physical disabilities, mental deficiencies, or any race, all human life is valuable, no matter where it comes from. So I took that very seriously into heart as I was growing up. And, people would always ask me, why do you have so many kids in your family? Doesn't that bother you? Things like that all the time when I was younger. And what I came to realize is no, it didn't ever. I love seeing, big families. I love being a part of a big family. I love little kids. I just love people. I grew up that way. And I think that cemented in me from a young age just to be pro-life.
Yeah, for sure. And are you the oldest?
I am.
The oldest? Wow, man. You're like the guinea pig, man. That's why
I was, for sure.
Yeah, man. How did you get started in the pro-life movement?
So when I was in college, I was interested in policy, in politics, obviously. I'd always been very passionate about, social issues, a lot of issues related to the family. I went out to Washington, D.C. for an internship with the Heritage Foundation. I was a member of the Young Leaders Program. There I was introduced to Emily Gao and Ryan Anderson. They're some of their policy experts on, family child policy and religious liberty. I got really connected to physician-assisted suicide and euthanasia. I got a pique and interest in that. And that kind of introduced me to one of the, the more nuanced sides of the pro-life movement, I would say. Not many people, when they think of pro-life, think of euthanasia or physician-assisted suicide, right? They think more of abortion.
Yeah.
So I got introduced to that. I did some research with them. I helped out with things here and there, wherever my responsibilities, aligned with what they were doing. And then when I went back to Utah for my senior year, my last semester at BYU, I was able to do legislative affairs and policy research for a think tank out there called the Sutherland Institute. And my school, BYU, didn't have a Students for Life group. We didn't have anything, so there wasn't a lot of pro-life advocacy on campus. So I was able to, kind of dive into the pro-life movement from more of a public policy standpoint. I was able to help with some, white paper and do some publishing of my own, of some op-eds, and assist with some legislative affairs on a couple of bills that were passed in the 2019 Utah legislative session. So I helped out with the Down Syndrome Non-Discrimination Act and then the 18-week abortion ban in Utah. And I loved it. It was just a really good time, and I was very passionate about the issue. And I didn't want to stop. At the time, my wife was pregnant. We were expecting our daughter. And I was looking for a job after college, and literally the night my daughter was born, the opportunity was presented to me. And I was like, whoa, that's a sign, right? Like, this is what I'm looking for. I can't pass this up. So I applied, and they had a position over in Florida, right? I lived on the opposite side of the country, but my wife grew up in Florida. So we had connections there, and we took the jump, went all the way across the country, and I've been working in the pro-life movement full-time ever since. It's been awesome.
Wow, man, that's awesome. Yeah, and you're in your 20s, right, Ryan?
I am. I'm 25. Yeah.
Yeah, 25. Yeah, 25, a family man and a daughter, huh?
Yeah.
Man, wow.
That's great.
Yeah. How has that influenced your drive for the pro-life movement? Now that you yourself have a child yourself.
Definitely. Yeah. Being a dad and, experiencing the process of pregnancy with my wife, seeing the ultrasounds, feeling my daughter kick against my wife's stomach, and, seeing a footprint go across her stomach when she's pregnant, and then being present in the room as the baby's born. Those experiences definitely mold you to become more pro-life as you see the humanity and you see the development of your own child in the womb. I myself would say, I was definitely pro-life before then, but I would say it just cemented my beliefs afterwards.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I bet. And that's a pretty big thing. Like at the age of 21, like I'm 21, so that's like so far, from my mind, just being a dad and having a family. Like it's things that I'd like to have, but it's not something that one really thinks of. And a lot of our generation is just completely turned off by that, And I'm sure when people ask you, like, "Hey, how old are you?" and they find out you have a family, I'm sure the reactions are just nuts. Like, really, man? Like,
yeah, people ask me that all the time. They're like, "Wow, you started out young," and I was like, "I guess I was 24." Like I didn't feel like I was that young. But yeah, it's definitely not as common as it used to be to have a family as young.
Yeah. And I bet there's a ton of misconceptions about like being a dad and having a family, and I'm sure like that's what's driving a ton of people our age from those ideas. What do you have to say to like these guys who are just like too scared to put the beer down?
Yeah, I'd
the
say
beer
there's
and the base
definitely
now.
different. I wouldn't say that everyone's circumstances are the same. And I'd say, everyone needs to find the right person.
Yeah.
But when you do find that person, and you do feel like you're ready to be married, why wait, right? A lot of people nowadays choose to cohabitate, when they cohabitate, sometimes there's unplanned pregnancies.
Right.
And a lot of those unplanned pregnancies, and a lot of the situations where we see people cohabitating and not being married and not having that solidified commitment, lead to abortion and things like that, because people are worried that they won't have the support they need. So when someone our age starts to engage in a sexual lifestyle, and makes those decisions, but doesn't recognize the potential consequences that might come out of that, that's serious. And I think our generation and probably the generation beforehand has dumbed down and really downtrodden the roles of mother and father in society today. And I think when anyone gets to the point of being a mother or father in society, they need to understand that it is a very important role that carries a certain burden, right? It does carry a responsibility and a weight. Your life does change. It's significant. But it is the most beautiful thing that you can do.
Yeah.
And it brings some of the most purpose I think anyone could experience in their life. Men and women are built and created to pass on generations. Right?
Yeah.
We're built to have children. We're not meant to just grow up, live alone our entire life, and then just fade away. We're meant to reproduce. So it does fill a hole in your heart in a way, right? It brings a sense of purpose and responsibility to a person that I think a lot of people just don't acknowledge and realize exists.
Yeah, and it's nuts because it's like we're almost being influenced every single day to run away from responsibility.
Definitely.
Like I feel like that's all it is, just every single day, from like social media to like the media that we watch on the day to day, just like you don't need it, just keep going, That's, you don't need it. I feel like that's the underlying message there. Yeah, but Ryan, so as I mentioned before, you are the state coordinator for Students for Life of America. What's it like, being a state coordinator? I'm sure a lot of driving involved, huh?
A lot of travel. Yeah, I travel 3-4 days out of the week. I travel, let's see, I think 1 month I put in around 4,000 miles on the road. So, I'm traveling coast to coast, north, south, east, west, every day of the week. It's an incredible experience. I get to meet thousands of people, be involved in a lot of beautiful situations where people, reconsider major decisions in their lives. They choose life. I get to talk, individually with people as well as address groups. I've had the opportunity and pleasure to be speakers at conference. I spoke at the March for Life in Florida. I've been, pretty involved in the legislative session last year with parental consent. It's been an incredible experience, but I think one of the most rewarding is to work with people around my age and help them learn how to better communicate and be more persuasive and gracious in their messaging on the pro-life movement, right? It's such a tense topic to a lot of people, and it carries a lot of emotional weight, especially because the age demographic that has the most abortions is between 18 to 25, right? So those are, girls our age in college that, are, partying and hooking up with guys that, like you said before, don't want to put down the beer and not embrace the responsibility.
Going from colleges and talking to a ton of students, is there a common trend you've been finding, on the reasoning why people are pro-choice? Is there a certain, and I want to get into some apologetics in a bit, but is there a certain trend you've been finding?
Yeah, I mean, people are very concerned about the economic state of, women and families in society today. A very common argument that you'll be presented with is, what about a poor single mother, right? That's something that people are very concerned with, and that's a valid concern, right? And we should try to help women get out of poverty and support good families, right? But I don't think the solution to that is eliminating the sufferer rather than the suffering, right?
Right.
We should approach what is causing the suffering rather than just approaching the sufferer. So I think that's a tough one. Sometimes you'll get students who come at you with circumstances of rape or life of the mother, and those should be taken very seriously and should be honestly debated. There are very real circumstances, even though they're rare, that occurs, and especially as a man, we need to be very careful with how we address that. We need to be very understanding and empathetic in those situations. But I think, one of the biggest observations I have about people who are pro-choice is as I go on campus and I've talked to thousands of students over the past year, right? They know the talking points, they know all of the quick slogans, but they don't know why they believe what they're saying, right? To ask them, okay, so like, why do you think it's not a human being? Or when does it become a human being in the womb, right? Because they'll say it's just a clump of cells. They can't formulate an answer that can back their opinion. And I think that's the most interesting part, is that a lot of people, especially our age, have become so miseducated on this issue that they're not able to actually defend their own beliefs. So they're very passionate about something they don't understand. And because of that, I think it causes frustration because they don't fully understand their opinion or the opinion that they're trying to represent. And I think that's an observation I've had, and it's been very, enlightening myself to help people walk through what they're dealing with and what they're going through in their head as they talk about this issue. Because as you can help people connect the dots on the philosophies that they're portraying and the outcome that it will represent, people become more and more uncomfortable with what they're saying and want to listen more to what you're saying and why you're saying it.
Yeah. And you could even say that the pro-choice side has become like the popular side, which causes others to just automatically take it if they want to be popular or, just fit in as a social norm. So I guess, that'd be another really good reason to start talking about it more. Men don't have a say on the top of abortion.
Yeah, well, first, the one thing I always do when I talk to someone is I ask them why, right? So if we're going to do a hypothetical right now where you're pro-choice and I'm pro-life, I'll ask you why. Why do you think I shouldn't have a say?
Well, because it's a woman's body.
It's a woman's body. Okay. Yeah. So let's say hypothetically, there is a very successful female medical researcher who has been studying male prostate cancer, right? Because prostate cancer affects men, right? Let's say that she comes up with the solution that can solve prostate cancer for all men, right? But she's not a man. Would it be okay for her to speak on it, or should we dismiss her opinion because she's a woman?
True. Well, I mean, obviously, we shouldn't.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we should acknowledge that arguments don't have genders, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we shouldn't, separate 50% of society on things that are going on, or on policy arguments, or problems, simply because they're of a certain sex. We've never done that in the history of the world on anything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the person who invented the tampon was a man, right?
Right.
And that is one of the greatest inventions that has helped millions of women across the world, right? We should have both men and women seeking to make the lives of men and women better, always.
Yeah. So why is it that we need men
involved in the pro-life movement?
Involved. Correct.
Okay. Yeah. So from what I think I understand of your question is why do we need men in the pro-life movement?
Yeah.
Well, why do we need fathers in a home? Why should men be concerned about the health and well-being of women? What is the role of a man in civil society? Those are questions I would ask, right? I think the role of a man in civil society is to protect, support, and provide for women and children and families, right? If we negate something that is affecting women and children in a negative way and say, I don't want to be responsible for any of this, I don't want to be a part of the conversation, we aren't embracing our role as men in society. Our role is to help protect women and children. So we need good men to stand up in the home and in the community and across the country and say, abortion is hurting men, or abortion is hurting women and children. We need to do something about this, right?
Yeah.
What kind of man does a woman want? I think a woman wants a strong man, a man that'll be there for her in times of difficulty, right? We don't want men that run away from responsibility. We want men that embrace it and that carry it forward. So I think it's very important that men understand that being pro-life and standing up in the pro-life movement is a responsibility that we have, simply because we are men. Our role is to protect and provide for women. And if we allow this violence and injustice to occur, we're failing in that aspect. We're not embracing that responsibility. And you can't have strong families if you don't have both strong men and women in society.
Yeah. And for any men out there who are watching now, Ryan, could you give a quick description of what Invictus entails for the thing? Yeah.
So Invictus is a program where young men that are in college or recently graduated engage in a serious intellectual discussion on what abortion is, some of the issues in society today that are addressing men and masculinity, and also engaging in a project that uplifts your community or your campus or your home towards a more pro-life goal. So for example, we have a fellow in Florida who's working on safe haven baby boxes, right? So our Invictus fellow, he is now working with the state legislature to create a way for safe haven baby boxes to be privately funded and implemented in the state of Florida, where babies are, it's out of all the states in the United States, Florida is the third highest state for babies being left on the side of the road or thrown in ditches or garbage cans after they're born, right? Which is awful. That's not even, abortion. That's infanticide, right? So what we want to do is create a solution to that. We want men to step up and say, hey, let's work together and let's get involved and stop this problem from happening. So this fellow is creating a campaign where he's going to fundraise, work with organizations to find locations for these baby boxes, and try to create a system that can be easily implemented in legislation for the legislature next year.
Wow. Sounds like a smart guy.
We are making strides, and those outcomes have come about after many years of trying to work together politically and address the abortion issue in a way that can be accepted in a bipartisan manner. If you look today at the voting records, parental consent for abortion was bipartisan. We're working with Democrats who are leaning more pro-life, and we want to make this something that the whole state can gather around and stand up and say, you know what, abortion is wrong. We want to make Florida the most pro-life state in the country. And in order to do that, we have to work together. So we're not trying to split things always along party lines like you may see in other places. We're trying to create a coalition and a combined effort to make Florida one of the most pro-life places ever, so that when Roe v. Wade is overturned on a federal level, we can also overturn it on a state level as well.
Yeah, and in case there, still people out, I'm sure there are, people who disagree with the parental consent bill, could you just give us a quick argument, why, it's a good thing that we have this now?
Yeah, definitely. So parental consent for abortion simply is the idea that a minor cannot have an abortion without parental approval, right? So a parent has to sign. Previously, we had parental notification, where it was that a minor would go to a Planned Parenthood, and Planned Parenthood would just let a family know that their daughter was having an abortion, right? But this is a little bit outrageous, because if you look at laws surrounding minors in pretty much every state across the country, a minor can't even get her ears pierced without parental approval, right? A minor can't go on a field trip without the approval of their parents. A minor can't take Tylenol or Advil at school without calling home and asking, a parent if this is okay. Those are very minor circumstances that require parental consent, right? So the idea that a very invasive and dangerous procedure can be conducted on a young woman without their parents knowing, that could cause lifelong effects, just needed to be reversed. And it is a no-brain law. It's a no-brainer that it got passed. I mean, it is something that every state needs to have, because it protects women, especially young women, from, making hasty and risky decisions without their parents being involved. Okay, so if I understand your question, it's that, how can I talk to someone who may have experienced a very trying or difficult circumstance in their life and help them feel value? Yeah. Well, I think if someone approaches your table or you about the issue of when you're tabling on abortion, for example, right? Or you're out sidewalk counseling or doing sidewalk advocacy, and they say, I'm suicidal, or they say, I think that life has no meaning. At that moment, I don't think that abortion is always the topic of discussion that needs to be held. I think abortion can be addressed, but there's a deeper component to what they're saying, right? If someone's coming up to you and saying that, for example, the girl who came up to me at University of South Florida, she said, I think that any life destined for foster care has no value because I was sexually abused in foster care. I think she's not as worried about the issue of abortion as she is the fact that those experiences defined her whole being, right? And in that moment, we need to surround those kinds of people with love and support, and tell them and explain to them that those experiences don't define them, that they're stronger than that we love them, that we were here to help them get through it, and that they can get past it. I think there definitely are circumstances in life where you'll be tabling or out talking to people about this issue, that you will have to drop, just the basic apologetics talking points and get real with people, and definitely look at people and identify what their true need is. And if someone comes up to you and explains that they feel like life isn't worth living anymore because of something they've experienced, you need to talk to that person about them and about how to help them, not about the issue of abortion, right? There's a deeper issue at that point that needs to be addressed in order to reach the conclusion that someone else's life is valuable enough to be protected, right? Because if someone doesn't think that they're valuable enough to live on or continue living, why would they think that someone else's life in a similar circumstance is worth living? Right? They're not. It's that idea of, if I can't support myself, why would I support others, right? We need to take care of ourselves too, in order to help other people.
A lot of people, they say they're pro-life, but in the case of rape and incest, what would be the best response to something?
Yeah, so I think the greater majority of people who are for exceptions are for that because they view it as a symbol of compassion, right? If anyone ever approaches you and says, I, am for abortion only in circumstances of rape and incest, that's typically not out of like a desire for abortions to occur electively on demand, right? They desire abortions to only occur in very extreme circumstances. And it's because they have this understanding, and it's a true understanding and it's correct, that rape is very difficult and traumatic on a woman, right? And I'm sure that carrying a child to full term while you're pregnant through the act of rape is very emotionally demanding and psychologically difficult and, very stressful on a woman. We can't be intellectually dishonest and say that it's not, right? But we also have to understand that if it is truly a human being, we don't make exceptions on when some human beings live and when some don't, right? And that might come off as very, uncompassionate, and it might come off as, like holier than thou to some people, but it's not. It's a consistent philosophy, right? And what I mean by that is that we can take the circumstances of one conception, right? I'll ask you right now. Do you know the circumstances of conception of your best friend?
I do.
You do? Wow, that's awesome. That's cool. Yeah, I don't, right? I've never asked my best friend how he was conceived, right? It's just not important to me, right?
Yeah.
And the greater majority of people, nobody really cares how someone was conceived, right? It doesn't define that individual's value, right? So what we know is that there are some women who choose life even in circumstances of rape, and they give birth to children, right? Those people grow up to be amazing, wonderful, productive members of society. There's nothing wrong with them, right? And when we tell people that in circumstances of rape, those babies should always be aborted, what we're saying is their lives aren't worth living because they were conceived in rape, right? But we also are trying to say, there's women who are affected and they need support, right? And that's true. We should always surround women with support after they've gone through sexual abuse, right? But let's consider what is support, right? Is giving a woman support in that situation just a quick abortion and then no healing afterwards, like no surrounding with family members or community or counseling? Is an abortion truly going to solve the trauma she feels? No. Abortion might be a short-term, very quick solution that she might feel for an instant, but might regret later on. But abortion in a circumstance of rape doesn't truly take away all the trauma and the pain she feels. That pain is still going to exist, right? So if we want to solve violence against a woman, we shouldn't add more violence with abortion, right? Because abortion is always an act of violence. It's the intentional termination of a fetus, right? So we need to surround them with love and care. The child also isn't guilty of a crime, right? So why are we putting the punishment on the child? We don't give the death penalty to rapists in American society today. So why are we giving a death penalty to a child that's innocent and didn't choose to be conceived in that manner? That we need to be more intellectually honest in the way we approach this philosophy, even if it might, be difficult to express at first. But we can support women and provide them healing while also advocating for life in all circumstances. A lot of people today, especially if you look at like the polarization in politics, especially, a lot of people don't want to listen to each other. We always talk about the right to free speech, right? And I'm a huge free speech advocate. I believe that is one of the most foundational rights we have in America. But I think along with free speech, we need to open our ears and listen, right? We need to listen to what other people are saying. More often than not, I think pro-lifers and pro-choicers share common ground on a lot of things. The majority of the American public isn't in favor of the DNC's platform for abortion. They don't want to see abortion legalized through all 9 months for any reason whatsoever. They don't want to legalize infanticide. The laws that were passed in New York and were proposed in Virginia just aren't popular with the average American public.
Mhm.
And as we can come to terms and talk to each other and garner, just a mutual understanding and conversation, and kind of drop that pride of I'm right, you're wrong on each side, you can have an intellectual and honest discussion, and that
Yeah.
can become productive, right?
Mhm.
We can talk about, what does the science actually say about when human life begins. Once
Yeah.
we become more comfortable and open and honest with one another, right? But like you're saying, there might be a humility component that both the pro-life and pro-choice, side needs to embrace.
Yeah, yeah. From what it sounds like, because this is probably the most controversial issue, in the entire planet. You know, would you think that we should start actually talking about this topic a lot more to just, get people more comfortable, with discussing the ideas?
Oh, definitely, for sure. I think we should talk about it a lot more.
Yeah,
I mean, it is a matter of life and death, right? It's not just you know a discussion based upon the best form of economics or tax reform. Although
yeah,
I think those are very important, right?
hmm,
It's something that directly affects every single day of our lives.
yeah,
A certain amount of children in America, right? And it also harms women, grown
hmm,
adult women, right?
yeah,
There are consequences to abortion on when you perform it on a young teenage girl, or when you perform it on a woman that is pregnant. You can
hmm,
you can damage the uterus lining. You can cause infertility. You There are instances where women have bled out and died. This is something that doesn't just affect the preborn, but also
yeah,
affects citizens that are just trying to live good lives every day.
hmm,
So yeah, I think it is something that needs to be discussed more often, and kind of be more openly embraced by people. Um, and I think that's happening more and more often. I think you're seeing that. I
yeah,
think we've gained a lot of momentum recently. And if you watched what happened with Justice Kavanaugh, people were very concerned about his opinions on Roe v. Wade and if that would be reversed. If you
hmm,
look, in the Democratic debate, there wasn't much discussion of abortion, but I think that's because it's being avoided because it is such a tense topic,
yeah,
right? But there are people who, on the Democratic Party who are trying to vocalize their concerns about no candidates being pro-life, right? You saw
right,
that. I forgot what her name was, but she stood up and asked Pete Buttigieg, uh,
hmm,
her opinion on abortion is that she's Democrat but she's pro-life, and that there's
yeah,
21 million Democrat pro-lifers, right? So I think it is an issue that's surfacing more and more, that it has always been very important to people, but it's starting to be discussed more often than not. You don't have to be the expert on everything to stand up for something.
Ryan, man, thank you so much for joining
Yeah.
us. Yeah, 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 and
Thank you,
to the
Michael.
no problem, man. And to the viewers, thank you. If you have any comments or any questions, please reach out to Ryan. We will provide his information in our Instagram feed. And if you have any comments or criticisms about the program that we're presenting to you now, please reach out to us. Tell us what you think. And thanks for joining us. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Michael. Have a good one.
Yeah, and join us next week. We'll be by Stephanie Toohill and her friend Elena in her testimony on watching each other's life. Thanks, Ryan.
Awesome. Thanks.